Thank you so much for being here this afternoon and for kind of rounding out our budgeting series with our last session today. Today is our session on reimagining the budget presentation. So we hope that folks find this session valuable and a nice way to kind of close up our experience. I am Courtney O'Brien. I work with the Agency of Education Operations team. I have with me today my colleague Taylor Goodwin. Should there be any questions or technical difficulties following the session, or you're looking to locate the slides or any of the materials that David and Karla will present, please feel free to reach out to Taylor or myself, and we will make sure to connect you. Okay, please proceed. Thank you both.
All right. Excellent, Courtney. Thank you so much. Karla and I are really excited to be here today. My name is David James, a Managing Director here with New Solutions K12. If this is the first session you're joining in the series, welcome. If it is, I forget how many total there are, 9th or 10th or 11th session you're joining, welcome back. Excited to have you again. Really excited for this session because I think this is, of all the tools that we've shared, one of the tools that I think we're most excited about, if not the most excited about, to share with y'all, given I think how helpful and powerful it can be for folks to walk away with this and just have a very tangible item they can use, and some ideas and recommendations that Karla will be sharing over the course of the call today for how to really use your budget presentation as a tool to build investment and share kind of the right level of details for folks as it relates to your budget. I was just in the last session, which was about building support for your budget, and we surveyed folks at the beginning of that. And folks that were on that session will recognize that we asked, where do you typically encounter challenges with building, buying, and investment for your budget? And 100% of people responded the community. And so we've crafted this tool really as a way to build support, not just with school-based staff and principals and district staff, but also the community in presenting and sharing what can be really complex and sometimes overwhelming amount of information in a coherent and clear way to make sure folks are on board. Just a little bit about this series and ourselves here on the front end. New Solutions K12, we're partnering with the Vermont Agency of Education to help folks think through what are some really effective and research-based practices when it comes to budgeting a bit more strategically. Our team has worked with hundreds of districts, thousands of schools across the country, including many in the state of Vermont. And I know, Karla, you personally have a lot of experience working with folks there as well. If you have questions at any point over the session today, feel free to scan this link either now, and you can pull up the question link, or we'll share it again at the end. Eliza from our team will also put this into the chat so folks can access it that way. Definitely enter any questions you have, and we'll follow up with both you as well as be able to post responses to questions on the agency website so folks access that more broadly. Some office hours will be hosted a little bit later in the new year as well, so keep an eye out for those. And the last point I'll mention before turning it over to Karla is that we really set this up to make sure that we're touching on not just the technical aspect of budgeting, which I think sometimes can be the aspect of it that folks immediately jump to or out of habit jump to, but I think especially with the template we'll be sharing today, what are the political and the practical considerations when you think about your budget and how to build buy-in and communicate it in an effective way. And so all the series that we put together, all the sessions we put together as part of the series, tried to find a mix of these three components and factors. So at this point, what I want to do is introduce Karla Baehr, who's worked with New Solutions in Vermont and elsewhere for over a decade. Her work is really focused on supporting districts honestly make the most effective and efficient use of their resources. So she's helped co-author a book on strategic budgeting with Nate Levinson, the president of New Solutions K12, and has created and presented many budget presentations herself as a superintendent, as a district leader. And so prior to work with New Solutions, she served as a superintendent of schools in both suburban and urban districts in Massachusetts, for about 20 years. And also as the deputy commissioner in the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Schools. So with that, Karla, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, David, and welcome to all the folks who are here. Appreciate your being here. I want to start by just saying that I wish I had known all this when I was doing my many budgets. I would have some of these tactics and strategies. I've used some I've learned as I've done the work with New Solutions. So I'm very excited about it. If you go to the first slide, those of you who were here yesterday, for the webinar, know that there were three big key points, and hopefully you're going to see these played out in this budget template that we've designed. The importance of telling a story, the importance of choosing your words carefully, particularly avoiding jargon, and using the budget presentation to build trust and show empathy, not just numbers. And then right before this session, a number of you, I'm sure, were at the Building Support for Budgets webinar. And again, we see the budget presentation as an opportunity to build support. And so you'll see an emphasis on schools, not just the district. You'll see an emphasis on making clear some of the trade-offs that you've, as a district, leaders have and principals have worked through. And you'll see some tactics here to try to win over the open-minded. So let me just explain that what we did was we've developed a 34-slide budget presentation template. It's got 34 slides in it. It's a tool designed to help build support for your budget. And it's a tool to help you put into practice those best practices for talking about the budget that we talked about, Nate and David and others have been talking about. What we want to be clear is the why, the how, and the what. We're not going to take you through and go through every slide carefully in this presentation. We want you to walk away from this having a clear idea of why we did it, why we've developed it, how to use it, and what's involved with it. So the why, we want very much to put together a template that would help you be clearer in your presentation, clear to the audience. Despite our best intentions as district leaders, we often are less clear than we need to be, and particularly around what's the big picture driving the decisions in this budget. So we hope you'll see in the template that we've really put an emphasis on that. A second is despite our best intentions, folks often walk away without key information that they want to have, or with misinformation, or they walk away with gaps that they then fill in, and more they fill in with the worst possible interpretations. So we designed this template to take that into account. And of course, we designed the template also to help you develop trust, credibility with your audiences. So what are the best practices that have influenced the budget template? These should be familiar to some of you who've been through the webinars earlier. Key thing is telling a story. This is not just about numbers. You're going to see in the template, the actual budget number of the recommended budget doesn't appear until slide 10, practically a third of the way through the budget template. And that's very deliberate. The story needs to be upfront. You'll see in the template a major effort to avoid jargon, some very explicit opportunities to show empathy and understanding of your audience, connecting goals, addressing common concerns. And you heard from Nate earlier today about the importance of focusing on schools, principals. So that's reflected in the template as well. So if we then go to the PowerPoint best practices, PowerPoint is a wonderful tool. It can also often be problematic. And so we've tried to, in this template, apply best practices of PowerPoint. We're showing key numbers only. You're going to be able to go into this, put your numbers in, but we're trying to keep it simple, keep it straightforward, to call people's attention to the most important pieces. And you can see in here, you're working on this in your districts when you use PowerPoint. How do you streamline the graphics? How do you avoid just words? How do you, in this case, be proactive so that you answer likely questions before they arise, and being clear about takeaways? You'll see a lot of use of animation in the template, in the slides in the template, and that's purposeful to try to guide the audience members toward the key points you're trying to make. Next slide, David. Um, as I said, you're going to get 34 slides, and the link will be available shortly. You'll be able to use it. You don't need it for this presentation. You don't need to have the slides open and available. You're going to get 34 slides. You're going to make the slides your own. They're designed so that you fill in your examples. You replace data with your data. You replace examples with your examples. You replace our sample data with your sample data. You're going to customize the presentation. You may not use all the slides. You may insert another slide that says something that's really important that for your district that's missing from this. We're going to ask you to be super careful when you use the template to look at the notes section for each slide. There are often sort of important notes in there that will help you. We also want to remind you to take them out before you use the presentation so that your audience is not seeing your notes for this. David, 2 examples. The next 2 slides are just 2 examples of the slides. Here's an example. It happens to be slide 5 from the template as part of setting context for your district. And it's just showing simple graphs of the changes in the student population that you're serving. The note on the bottom that we've circled there in red, the first one tells you to right click on the graph and check the edit. So you can put in your own data into this slide. And for those of you like me who are not entirely tech savvy, the second note would send you to a video that shows you how to do that, if you don't already know how to do that. I would point out this slide in the template uses animation. So you'll want to look at the slide in presentation mode so that you can see where the animation is. The animation shows the left one on percent of students living in poverty first, then it moves to the percent of students with special needs, then to English language learners, obviously to make it easier to focus your audience so that they're following what you're trying to convey to them. Next slide, David. The next example.
I was just going to say, Karla, to that point, for the purposes of today's presentation, we removed a lot of the animations on the presentation we're sharing with you right now. So you'll see some of those, but most of those you won't see. That's intentional, so we don't have to click a bajillion times with all of you. But just know when, as Karla shared, when you open that, there's going to be a lot of animations, which are intentional. Just make sure you're aware of them and they fit what you're trying to present.
Thanks, David. Thanks a lot. This second slide is actually slide 10 from the template, and is the first time that your district's budget numbers would appear. And if you take a look at these numbers, you'll see that they're pretty unrealistic. That's kind of deliberate to try to make the point that you got to put your numbers in there, and your examples too. We gave 3 examples of what might be top spending increases: salary, cost of living adjustment, insurance premiums, special ed. Your district's going to have its own top 3 reasons for spending increases, and the same thing for top spending decreases. You'll have your own. These are just placeholders for you to use. And again, this is a time when you'll want to look at the slide in presentation mode, so you see how the animation works and see that it works for you. So let me talk now in the next slide about the content. This is applying best practices for a communication and building support. So this is content and sequence. So this is the sequence. We start the template with you identifying successes and highlights in your district. Then we go to a bit of an overview of the district. We know that particularly community folks don't necessarily know all the schools. They don't necessarily know the overall picture of your district. And so we think it's important to have that there first in the highlights of it. Then it launches to the budget presentation. And the budget presentation is 6 slides, basically. A couple slides lead up to an explanation of why the budget is. Then slide 10 gives the number. And the next couple slides give a little bit more context and explanation. We then, in the template, go to something that is complicated, and we wanted to try to find a way to simplify it. The tax rate explanation seems really critical. There's a huge amount of misinformation about it throughout the state. And we know that having a clear, straightforward way to explain the tax rate process and how it creates the tax rates for your district matters. We trust most of you have seen the memo on the agency's website that explains in considerable detail how the tax rate is set. This is a further illustration of it in the template, which again, we hope will be very useful to you. Some of you may find that it's just not necessary, or it's going to be more confusing for particular audiences, and you may not want to put it in. You just want the bottom line, number 5 here, of what is the tax rate that clearly communicates how taxes will change in your district. That's a decision you'll make. We wanted to have the template have all the information you could reasonably need. Then it goes to common questions. This is that best practice of preemptively answering common concerns. So we've got a couple of slides in there that address some scenarios, central office costs, et cetera. And then we have a couple of slides that are designed to build trust and empathy, build credibility, acknowledge for your audience the challenges you faced in building the budget. So that's the sequence. That's the content. Let's jump to a bit of the template itself, David. So it starts off with an opportunity for you to put a happy picture of kids in place of this one, or use this one. Jumps in the second. As we said, the next slide goes right to some examples of successes and highlights. We just put a couple of examples in there. Maybe one of you wants to put in that one of your graduates was on the was a starter on the Vermont team that just won the national championship. Not sure what you want to put that will bring a smile to the folks in your communities. But we really do think it's important for you to highlight what's going well in the district, to set a positive tone. So here we've got a couple of examples, one of results, another one of process, of key initiatives that you've launched. Then we go to the overview of the district. Again, you fill in the blanks. You add photos if you want of kids that might be recognized by your audience. You may want to add the number of teachers and the number of employees to this context, but the idea is big picture. Make it personal by naming the schools, making it personal by listing the towns, making it personal by putting your photos in. Then it goes from there to some basic data on student enrollment. This pattern will be true for you, but you'll plug in your data for your district here. And the next slide, the same thing. You've just seen this slide earlier. This is the slide that shows your student population. Again, you'll plug in your actual data. The next slide gives you an opportunity to identify additional challenges that you're facing. We've identified here 3 examples. These may or may not be true for you. You've got to substitute yours or add one that might be particularly important in your context. Then we go in the template right to current budget landscape. This is an animated slide. It's inviting people first to look at pressures that are coming off the budget. We couldn't think of many examples. We did think of the one. The state of Vermont is subsidizing education funding to minimize tax increases. There may be others that are taking pressure off your budget for this year. There's opportunity here to perhaps put a historical example that you know of. For example, maybe you did a new contract for transportation last year, or a new way to organize transportation, and that's holding down increases in your budget. You could put that there. On the right side, again, examples of the key pressures on your budget. Again, the idea is to try to keep it not more than 6. We know there are tons of pressures, but this is high level. This is identifying the most important, so people don't at this stage get lost in the tiny detail. The next slide, I think we've shown is the notion of the budget reflecting district goals. Again, we've put a couple of possible goals. You know what your goals are, so you would insert those there. And then the slide goes to the budget development timeline, the notion that folks want to know what's gone into this budget process and where you are in the process now. Again, we've populated it with some time sequences, some examples. You'll adjust it to your context, your facts. Finally, in slide 10, we get to the actual budget. And David can just go through this quickly to just show the animation. This is, again, just trying to direct what people look at. And again, you'll fill in the factors, you'll fill in the numbers, but it's an opportunity, again, to be just very clear on one slide, the high level picture of your budget. The next slide gives a little more context for your budget. First one is factors that led to increases in the budget. The next slide is steps that you've taken to control spending. And there is a temptation, both in this slide and the one right before it, there's a temptation to put much more on the slide because, of course, there are more factors than 3. Our recommendation is that you hold yourself to no more than 3. 3 is good for the increases. Maybe you want to have a second slide for steps you've taken to control spending, but mostly you want to put that additional detail into the appendix. The appendix is a place where you can put and should put lots of detail so that no one thinks you're hiding anything. And so that you can provide lots of information and detail, because some folks want a lot of information and a lot of detail. But by having and making good use of an appendix, you can maintain the focus on the highlights and directing the audience's attention to the really high level key points that you want to make so you don't lose your story in the detail. The next series of slides are the explanation for the tax rate. And you'll see as David just works quickly through those, these are animated slides. Couple of slides on the education fund, then a couple on the homestead yield, and then a couple of slides on the spending per equalized pupil. So it's a kind of a straightforward explanation for folks of how it works. Takes that memo and brings it down to about 7 slides. And so then you get to slide 20 in the template, and this is the sort of the bottom line. And this one, I think we've left the animation in it, David, so folks can see that. So it enables you to sort of work through an explanation with the help of animation that walks people through how it is that what will happen to the average homeowner's taxes with this budget. And again, I want to reiterate that you decide how many of these slides to use. Obviously, you're going to use something like slide 20. We would urge you to use slide 20, but how much of the previous slides you use is really up to your context, your audience. The next slide is the first of 3 scenarios, and you'll have to identify which one or ones are accurate, are relevant for your community. So you'll see in scenario 1, the district is reducing staff, but the tax rate is up. Why? And this is anticipating a key question that has stymied folks and caused lots of misinformation. This is trying to directly answer that question. We've answered it. We've answered it with explanations that should apply in most cases. You may have additional factors that apply in your community for scenario 1. Scenario 2 is the budget barely changed, but the tax rate increased. Why? And again, anticipating this question, trying to tackle the challenge of misinformation. And then scenario 3, the district added staff, but the tax rate did not increase. Why? So again, you'll choose the scenarios that apply in your context, and you'll customize them to your you'll make edits so that they reflect the reality in your district. Then we're at slide 24. We know that what happens in central office is a major concern to many in your audience, particularly in the community. So our recommendation in this slide in the template is to come straightforwardly deal with it. Two points you might make is that you've made substantial cuts already, and the voiceover that you give can identify those, and that then you point to this the budget, what you might be doing in this year's budget to contain central office costs. There may be additional points that you would add or change from this, but it's our strong recommendation that you put this up front, come at it, because it is a question always in many people's minds. The next slide is one that's again, it's designed for empathy and trust building. You're acknowledging here that you know that taxes have gone up, you know, in the past, and that and how you've gone about responding to this very real concern. And then the next slide is a slide, again, designed for credibility and for visibility. There are lots of changes in your budget. We want to make sure that they're captured, and also so that people who are affected by changes, increases and reductions, see themselves in this presentation. The library budget may have been trimmed some. You want the librarian who may well be watching the presentation see herself or himself in this list. Again, you don't want a list much bigger than this. You want it to be just a couple of words for each item, and you can use the appendix for all the detail. But you certainly want to make sure that people know that there are lots of other changes in your budget, and that you're acknowledging that they have impacts, both positive and adverse. And that gets us to the next 2 slides, which 3 slides actually, which focus on impacts. And this is where we recommend in this template that you speak to schools specifically, not the district in general. That you make this a school-centric slide, how the budget increases impact our schools. And you speak about specific schools and what this budget, in this case, what the increases that you're building in, what they do for the schools. And again, it's our strong sense that people want to see their schools in the budget. The district is pretty amorphous to them, pretty theoretical to them. They want to see their schools. So identifying impacts on schools is in this slide, and then the next slide is impacts of budget decreases on the schools. So again, as in most of the other slides, we've offered an example or two to give a sense of of the scale of what you might be putting in here, and you'll put in what applies to your context. And then the slide 29 in our template, what these changes mean for central office, so that you can speak to what the impacts are at the district level, at the central office. Then we get to slide 30 in the template. Again, this is a slide designed to build empathy, to build trust, that you know that there have been trade-offs. You know that these are challenging outcomes. These are challenging decisions, and that you and the people that built the budget with you have engaged, bring important values and shared values to the work. And then the budget, and then the template concludes with an opportunity for you to do voiceover around the core idea about your confidence that the budget can benefit students, staff, taxpayers, and the community. It's a kind of visual of yes, you're trying to speak to all those audiences and have a document that addresses needs that all of them have. 32, slide 32 in the template lets folks know what the next steps are in the budget process. And slide 33 invites them to bring their questions, their comments, their wonderings, could be their suggestions. Make this slide your own, where they can send where they can address questions. Obviously, lots of times you have questions right there in the presentation, but people always need and want an opportunity to ask those questions, put those questions in another venue. And how you'll have to come up you'll want to come up with districts about how you will respond. Lots of districts post answers to frequently asked questions on their website, or they have forums in which they review the questions they've received. A whole range of opportunities. I know you've got them. You just have to customize this to your district. And then slide 34 is which is the last in our template, is the placeholder for your appendix. And again, the appendix, we see the appendix as a place where you build credibility, you build trust by putting all the key information and background information there, all the detail, so that you can leave your presentation to have the highlights, the key information, the context, the story. So that's the template, 34 slides. This template to us is a first draft, and we are hoping that we will get feedback from you as you take a look at it, as you start to work with it. You'll see things. Gosh, I wish they had done this, or I wonder if they thought about this, or I'm unclear about why they did this and why they didn't do this. We would love that feedback. The agency wants it very much, and New Solutions wants it very much, because we see this as a work in progress, that this is a tool that will evolve to better and better meet the needs of Vermont leaders. David, what do you think? I think that this has been a long time for folks. I wonder how you want to end this.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'll say thanks everybody for joining the session today. I just posted the link to that budget template feedback form in the chat. So if folks have thoughts about how that template can be improved even further, certainly share those, just as Karla noted. And Eliza from our team also included the link will include the link for our question and answer. If you have other questions more generally separate from that template document, feel free to fill that out as well. The other thing I should note, and I guess we should have noted this at the beginning, is that we did consult with a number of school business officers in the state, as well as some folks at the Agency of Education about this. So we do hope that it really is a Vermont-specific tool for y'all to use and reflects a lot of the realities that y'all face on a regular basis. So with all that, I know we got a couple minutes here to wrap things up. I think, Karla, you and I can certainly hang around if folks have questions, immediate questions they have about the tool or about the presentation more generally. Happy to share those. But if folks have to jump at this point, thanks again for joining, and best of luck with your presentations, whether it's the first one or the fourth one that's coming up for y'all.